Okay. We're gonna call tonight's August 1st, 2024 Planning Commission meeting to order. And I'm gonna take roll call. Commissioner Yang. Present. Commissioner Lind. Here. Commissioner Kazicki. Here. I always say it afterwards. Commissioner Hargreaves.
Here.
And Commissioner Drummond is here. And then if you would like, I'd invite you all to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and then commissioners or staff, does anybody have any changes to make to the agenda for tonight? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll motion.
You'll make that motion. Someone second? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No one opposed. Okay, and then we're gonna move right into open forum, which is an opportunity that we give to the public who's present to step up to the podium and address the commission for any items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if anyone is here and would like to speak about something that's not on the agenda, now is the time that we invite you to participate. And it looks like no one is here for that, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to approving the minutes for July 2nd, 2024 meeting. Did anyone have any comments or changes to be made to the meeting minutes?
Commissioner Drummond, I did the first sentence, 5 commissioners, I think, were present. It lists 3.
Yeah, I was gonna make note of that as well, and I think it's probably just a template because it was the same thing last time.
Yeah.
But we were running really slim for quite a while, so, but I made that note too. Anyone else? Otherwise, I will make a motion to approve the July 2nd, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes with the change to the number of commissioners that were present. All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Say nay. Okay, and now we're gonna move into our first item of new business for the evening, and all of our new business for tonight will have a public comment opportunity. The first up is the J. Brown Garage CUP, and we're gonna begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first public hearing item for tonight is a conditional use permit request from J. Brown for a new accessory structure on his property. The request itself is a conditional use permit to allow for an additional accessory structure that would exceed the 3,969 square foot accumulated accessory structure footprint for the property, as well as a conditional use permit that would allow for a sidewall height to exceed 10 feet in the side yard at 22355 Oakdale Drive. The structure itself would be the 4th accessory structure on the property. It's located in the west side yard, just south of the largest shed on the property and west of the second largest shed on the property. The structure itself does meet and exceed all required setbacks for the rural residential district. And the accessory structure itself has a footprint of 780 square feet, which would bring the accumulated square footage of accessory structure space to 4,848 square feet on a 19.63 acre lot, which may be approved through a conditional use permit. And then again, with the sidewall height, the applicant is requesting a sidewall height of 12 feet and 1 1/8 inch, which is more than the 10 feet that are allowed in the side yard, which can also be approved through a conditional use permit. And just want to note that the building itself does not exceed the 35-foot height limit in the rural residential district. So staff does find that the standards found in section 1030 and 1070.020 have been met, and they have been met with the proposed conditions in this report. So the two conditions that we would like to add on to it would be that the structure itself can't be used for accessory living space and can't be used for commercial space without first obtaining proper city approvals. So our recommendation at this point would be to open the public hearing and take testimony. And then staff recommends approval of the draft resolution with the added conditions that the shed itself can't be used for living or commercial uses without separate approvals from the city.
Thank you, Dwight. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and open the public comment opportunity regarding the J. Brown Garage CUP. I just want to note that the public comments will be limited to in-person comments. We do request that you fill out a card prior, but if you haven't, you are welcome to come to the podium and make comment, but Natalie will call those who filled out a card to come first. And then we will be enforcing a 5-minute time limit for all speakers, just so that we can keep our agenda on time. So if there's anyone who would like to make public comment regarding the J. Brown Garage CUP, do you have any comment cards?
I don't have.
Okay, but if anyone would like to, we did receive an email from someone, and that has been given to every single commissioner on the dais. But if anyone would like to make comment, you're welcome to come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. You are welcome to ask questions. We won't have a back and forth, but if you have a question that you would like to ask, then we'll make record of those comments or questions, and then staff and commissioners will, staff will answer those questions if we're able to afterwards, after the public comments done. Okay, but no one is stepping up to the podium, so I'm gonna go ahead and entertain a motion for us to close the public hearing. Will someone make that motion?
I'll make that.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor,
Aye.
say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, so then we get to begin our commission discussion and recommendation. Is there anyone who would like to go first regarding this issue?
I can. I think it looks like it meets all the requirements. I like the idea that it provides indoor storage for vehicles and I think an RV or something that otherwise would be out in the yard, and it's always nicer to have those in. It looks like a nice building. Doesn't look like it's really visible to any of the neighbors. It's set back on the lot. It's kind of behind the home and other buildings, so yeah, I'm okay with it.
Is the applicant here?
Yeah, here.
Oh, hi. I'm just curious as to sidewall height. Is that driven by the pre-manufactured?
The garage door that we want, we're thinking about an RV that's tall.
Okay.
It needs to go in there.
Okay.
And that's the rationale.
Okay, thank you.
And for us as a commission, I will just say that this is what issue or time 3 or 4. This is on our dashboard as something to review, whether or not this sidewall height limitation actually fits with the number of requests that we're receiving. So
It
that's a
does
great
make
question, though.
sense to have that higher because a lot of people have RVs and need to store them and you can't get those in a.
It's definitely on Natalie's radar. Definitely. Is there anyone else who has any questions or comments that they would like to make? If not, we can.
I appreciate it. I believe, you were a driver in changing our eaves requirement, which was lovely. So that was nice. So,
Or other buildings, we have another building that looks like this.
yeah, I remember it.
Finger barn,
Yeah,
and it's got a 12 overhang.
I remember the argument. It made all the sense in the world. So anyway, I love it. I think it's great.
Well, if no other comments or questions are before the commission, then I will make a motion to approve the J. Brown Garage CUP. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. And then we're moving on, and the next issue at hand is the consideration of the Rural Commercial Development Rights Zoning Ordinance Amendment. And we will also begin this with a staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the second public hearing item tonight. As you said, it was for changes to our rural commercial subdivision and development rights sections of the zoning ordinance. This is a part of the ongoing commercial and industrial update work plan that the city council approved for this year. The city evaluated as part of that, we've been evaluating how to apply development rights within the rural commercial CR. and transitional rural commercial TCR zoning districts. Staff received direction from City Council at the end of June to move forward with zoning ordinance amendments that memorialize and clarify our current practices of the city's development rights program. The proposed amendments for you tonight are consistent with the language discussed during the joint work session with the Planning Commission and City Council at the end of May. So just for some background, wasn't too sure if we would have anyone in the audience, so I'll try to run through this quickly, but the development rights program's been in place since about the 1980s and is a method of managing the density and intensity of subdivisions in the following areas. It includes our rural areas where municipal services are not planned, as well as properties that are zoned urban reserve. These are properties that are technically within our MUSA where municipal services are planned, but services are not yet available, nor will they be for some time. So essentially, development rights were assigned to original parcels at a rate of 1 right per 10 acres. So a property of 20 acres would have 2 rights and could subdivide in up to 2 lots. The development rights are used in conjunction with a relatively small minimum lot size, such as 2 acres for our rural residential district. It allows for some flexibility. It allows for property owners to carve off a smaller lot if they, for example, for a family member who might be interested in building a home but doesn't need the additional acreage, and potentially a farmer wants to retain as much tillable acreage as possible. It also allows for some smaller usage such as within the context of a commercial subdivision, a gas station probably doesn't need a 10-acre lot. So it allows for flexibility, but then those smaller lots are balanced with larger lots so that we're not exceeding a rate of 1 unit per 10 acres. So there is inconsistency within the code as to whether the development rates apply to commercial subdivisions. Section 1070.070 says that the development rights map reflects the number of development rights remaining on properties zoned agricultural and rural residential and is intended to show the maximum number of residential units that may be developed per individual property. However, this is inconsistent with the development rights map itself, where there are properties zoned for rural commercial that are showing development rights. Additionally, we haven't had an agricultural zoning district for quite some time. And then section 1040.020, which is in our urban reserve district, and then the section 1040.030 in the rural residential district talks about the assigning of development rights. And it says this section identifies the maximum number of residential units or non-residential units that may be developed. The development rights program is intended to preserve a rural residential environment with active agribusinesses. Development rights shall be calculated based on the total lot area and rounded to the nearest whole number. So previously, the city's practice has been to apply development rights to both residential and non-residential subdivisions based on that language in the urban reserve and rural residential districts. The specific examples where we have applied this has been the Dobazinski subdivision, which was a rural commercial subdivision. The public works subdivision, the city purchased a development right from the Rolke property off of County Road 19 and, oh goodness, 10.
County Road 10.
Thank you. It's not 30, County Road 10 and County Road 19, in order to create what is a quasi-industrial building. And then it was also affirmed as part of the Kirinimi Meadows concept discussions with council. The applicant had wanted to rezone half of the property to commercial, and the council affirmed that they would want to see development rights applied to those commercial units, being that you can't have it both ways. You can't get the 10 development rights assigned to the property and have 10 homes plus additional commercial properties. So a concept plan was reviewed by council in February 2024 that did not adhere to the development rights within the rural commercial district, and it led to a desire to reevaluate how we are utilizing these rights within the CR district. So the Planning Commission first discussed this at your regular meeting in April, not your regular matting. The general desire was to memorialize the application of development rights based on existing practices, and this was communicated to council. The commission also expressed desire to hear more input from the property owners specifically nearest to the rural commercial and transitional rural commercial districts. Council did hear this feedback and directed staff to move forward with a survey which was open to the public. We sent invitations specifically to the surrounding property owners. And then we also did our best to try to communicate to the general public that this survey was available for anyone to participate in. It was primarily a visual survey depicting 6 different options of various intensities, including the status quo of how properties can develop under development rights. A large majority of the respondents confirmed a desire to continue the development rights program within the rural commercial district. So the ordinance amendments in front of you tonight, there's a few areas, and the intent with this was to try to clarify anything that's kind of come up in the last few years that I've been here, any questions, and also have it be consistent language throughout, so we don't have this confusion anymore. So in the urban reserve and rural residential districts, there's not a whole lot of changes. We've just changed, instead of density requirements, we're just gonna call it development rights. And then the units has been changed to lots, because we do allow for accessory dwelling units, and I don't want that to get confusing. So we're talking about the ability to subdivide. Then in the rural commercial district, I took this as an opportunity to get rid of home daycare facilities because homes are not allowed in the rural commercial district. So just, again, kind of clarify, just a small inconsistency that was discussed during the joint work session. So it's a little odd to have it here, but we're just trying to clean things up where we can. And then we get to the rural commercial development rights. We've added a new subdivision technically. The new subdivision 7 says that the 6th section identifies the maximum number of non-residential lots that may be developed and kind of using very similar language as the previous zoning districts. And then for the transitional rural commercial, we made sure it was clear that agriculture is indeed allowed during the transitional phase before it's actually zoned rural commercial. And then clarified that in order for development rights assigned to properties within the zoning district, the property first has to be rezoned to rural commercial for consistency. Right now, it's silent on it. So just again, trying to clarify how we would anticipate these rights to be used. And then in the development rights map section, got rid of the zoning district that doesn't exist, clarified the zoning districts where these rights do apply. So it's the urban reserve, rural residential, rural commercial, and technically the transitional rural commercial. And then clarified that it is the maximum number of residential and non-residential lots. Further, we've clarified that development rights are non-transferable. This is how it has been applied for a couple of decades now, at least. It's been just not exactly clear in our code, and this is a chance to clean that up. So development rights cannot be transferred except as allowed by our open space and preservation plat. There is a little clause in there that says we've given you too many bonus lots. There's a way to use those elsewhere. However, development rights can be reassigned as part of a lot consolidation, lot line adjustment, or subdivision application. And that's how we've been applying this for at least the last 2 decades, to my knowledge. And then the only other change was just clarifying the appeals process, that they either need to provide where the applicant would need to provide the calculation error or other evidence of record keeping error to justify the objection. So those are all the changes. At this time, we should open the public hearing and take any testimony. Staff recommends approval of the draft ordinance amending the various sections of code. And then you also have a draft resolution with findings and fact.
Thank you. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and open the public comment opportunity regarding the rural commercial development rights zoning ordinance amendment. But I know that these gentlemen are here for our next issue, so oh, you would like to? Absolutely. Please state your name. Well, you're welcome to make a question. Just state your name and address for the record, and then we'll answer your question
Sure.
as soon as you're done because there's no other public comment.
You don't know, these guys can have. the same
They might want to chime in.
Yeah, my name's Josh McKinney. My address is 1130 Vagabond Lane North in Plymouth. I actually have done some development consulting for some folks that are applicable to this zoning district. So I have a question, because something I ran into at that point in time. Is there a maximum square footage of building that can occur within one development right?
So there's a maximum impervious surface limit in some districts. So the rural commercial district specifically has a 50% impervious surface limit. So that would be the constraint that you would have to work with.
So if I'm, and remind me, it's 10 development rights. Or 1 development rights per 10 acres. So I could go up to 200,000 square feet on 10 acres.
Theoretically, yes.
Theoretically.
So anything that's more than one building, like a principal building, would require a conditional use permit.
There we go. So that's my question. So, because there's a. when I
Because you
looked-
knew there was gonna be a catch.
Yes, well, so I was looking at this before, probably for someone, that had submitted something like this before. And the question was, okay, well, are we gaming the system by saying, okay, I'm gonna have 20,000 square foot buildings, or 200,000 square foot building, and I can preserve my remaining development rights, and that's my question.
Yep.
You got this figured out, great. Thank you.
No, I appreciate, because I think sometimes the questions highlight areas where it isn't figured out. And sometimes with the questions, you don't know what you don't know until an issue arises, and then you say, oh, shoot. So, it's a good question. But if there's nobody else who has comment or question, then we will, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. And then all those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, and then at this point in time, does anyone, I know that this is an issue I'm not sure, Commissioner Yang, because you're newer to this, but the rest of us have kind of been reviewing it on a regular basis, but if anybody has discussion or questions, now would be the time to ask those. There's somebody who wants to
I do have.
begin,
a
jump in.
question. I don't remember the clause. I have section 6 subdivision or
What page are
whatever.
you on?
Okay, I don't know. The paragraph about transferability,
Yes.
does that cover?
Page 4.
Oh,
right?
thank you.
404.
404.
Hmm,
In the, I have
Yeah,
like,
okay.
yeah,
Either way, does that cover selling building rights? Or no?
Kind of.
Cause I don't,
The
it's not
idea,
explicitly called out here and people
Yeah.
are gonna care about that.
so the idea is we're not involved, the city's not involved with the actual sale of development rights. And the only time where you would actually be able to do that, is if you have a shared property line with somebody
Mhm.
else who has development rights that they can share with you. So basically, as part of the plat, we can pool the development rights and reassign them. You can't transfer from one property in the northwest corner of Corcoran to a property more in
Sure.
central.
Yep, makes sense. Okay, so we are kind of not calling it out on purpose. Okay, all right, well, that was one question. The other question was on the rezoning requirement.
Mhm.
Okay, is there any other solution? It just feels like it's gonna be more staff work for this.
So the
Like,
transitional rural commercial district is intentionally a holding zone similar to the urban reserve.
okay,
So the city can, if we're saying we're ready to, my understanding is it was created because they didn't want to make existing homes a non-conforming use until they were ready to turn into a commercial use. The idea being it limits your ability to expand, and sometimes it limits your ability to really feel like you can invest in your property safely. So the idea being, while it's a TCR, the house is still a conforming use, you're able to expand and invest. And then once you are ready to redevelop, you would, at that point, submit a rezoning application to the rural commercial. So,
Okay.
yeah, so the
So
idea is
no.
we don't, yeah, it's a holding zone, it's really meant
Got it.
as a holding zone. The solution would be to rezone that area as commercial now.
right,
And, you certainly can do that, it's just a policy decision.
but it also limits or restricts what that landowner is able to do with their. property.
yeah, and we don't
Yeah.
want that, so, okay, that makes sense. That was all I had.
I did have a question too. It's in the survey results
Mhm.
around in the middle here about what types of businesses should be in the commercial rural.
Mhm.
And it looks like we've got lines where we do not have, you have restaurants, and then you've got 24, and then you've got nothing, and then you've got 8. Like every other one is missing. Am I?
Oh,
reading that wrong?
interesting. That might have just been because I had trouble spitting it. I could certainly revise that, so that that's clear for our subsequent discussions. I can
Yeah,
certainly
and
get
I,
that
and I
done
thought
for
there
you.
were more uses.
Yeah,
for
no,
And
that,
it
I
looks
think
like you have
it
results.
just
for
ran
more
out of, it
uses.
just ran out of space. So thanks for catching that.
I do appreciate, I will say that being able to see the visual survey results, I
Mhm.
feel like that, was appreciated. And I know that it's not always reflected in those who have the time or those who make the time to take the survey, but I know a lot of good conversations were happening, even if those individuals weren't able to take part in the survey. But I appreciate seeing it that way. The only comment that I have is just, it is not productive at all, but it's just lamenting the fact that we allowed ourselves to lose our agricultural zone. But I know that was years ago, but I just feel the need to share that. I think it's a loss for the community as a whole. And I wish that there was a way to recoup that. But all that being said, I think that this was necessary, and I appreciate all the work that staff has done over the last few months to clarify this particular issue. And
What does that mean that we lost our agricultural zone?
no land in the city is designated as agricultural zone unless a landowner puts their land into an agricultural preserve. But as soon as their agricultural preserve expires, or they no longer want to have their land in an agricultural preserve, the city does not denote any land as agriculture.
So
It's just an issue. It's not really related to this, and I did not mean to take us down a rabbit hole, but we'll talk afterwards. So that we can keep it moving, and be respectful of these guys' time, unless you feel like, it will deter from this actual issue
Yeah,
because it is,
no,
so I didn't
let's
mean to do
move
that.
on.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything else before we?
Put the lid back on that.
Hey, I feel like every opportunity to highlight that is necessary. Okay, so if no one else has additional questions or comments, I will entertain, not make, but I'll entertain a motion to approve the city file 23-023, making the changes to the rural commercial development rights zoning.
I'll make the motion.
All right, all those in favor? Say aye.
Uh,
Anyone opposed? All right, passes with everyone saying. All right, and then that takes us to our last public hearing item, which is the Hope Meadows PUD amendment. And we're gonna begin this with actually, this is not a public comment.
That's just.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is not a public comment, but it does begin with the staff report, so.
And it's also item 6D. I'm clearly writing these slides and I'm very. So, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The last item in front of us tonight is not a public hearing. Just because at this stage, the PUD amendment, final plat PUDs, they're not typically something that opens up a public hearing, although public comment is always welcome. The request tonight, again, the applicant is Hope Ministries. We're talking about the area, the northwest corner of County Road 30 and County Road 116 surrounding Hope Community Church. Preliminary PUD and plat was approved for these properties in February of 2024, earlier this year. And staff and the applicant team have been working diligently to work through the preliminary conditions of approval and as well as marketing the properties to potential buyers. They have found a builder for the villas and townhomes, JP Brooks. This would be their first development within the city. Additional areas of flexibility have been identified as we work through this. Specifically, the buffer yard requirements near the villas and the townhomes on the north end of the site. A couple of setbacks that are they're specific lots. And the size of landscaping islands and the landscaping calculations for the commercial area. So we'll start with the buffer yards. So the city adopted a new buffer yard ordinance in 2023. There are a significant amount of planting requirements required for this buffer yard area. And we've granted flexibility, in at least one development already where they were struggling to meet the buffer yard ordinance. A buffer yard class E is required between commercial zoning districts and urban reserve district. And there are urban reserve properties where they need a buffer on the north and west side of the development. The underlying zoning district of the general mixed use, for this PUD is general mixed use, and it is considered a commercial zoning district. However, the areas where some of the areas we're requiring that buffer yard class D have uses that are not as intense as a commercial use, and also don't really have a apartment building that's nearby. So these are single family detached homes and then townhomes, which are lower density products than what we really anticipated for the GMU. And so the applicant is requesting that we consider some flexibility in what type of class we are applying along the perimeter. They are requesting class B be applied to the perimeter of the perimeter adjacent to the villas. So this is the northwest area portion of the site. And a class B buffer is consistent with what we would require a single family zoning district to use when they are adjacent to the urban reserve. And then similarly, they're requesting a class C buffer yard be applied to the perimeter adjacent to the townhome. So that's in the northeast area of the site. Again, the request there would be consistent with what we would require a townhome zoning district such as a residential mixed zoning to use when they are near an urban reserve district. I'll also say there is significant stormwater ponding as well. So there is quite a bit of setback still in addition to the buffer yard between the townhomes and the perimeter. In exchange, the products they are now proposing have reduced some density in this area. So instead of 51 townhomes as initially proposed, they are showing 45 townhomes. And they have 22 detached villas where there used to be 26 villas. There used to be a few twin homes and those are now gone. So it's just single family homes. And so they have reduced the density in this area as well. In an attempt to try to fit everything on the lots, including the landscaping. For the setbacks, again, it's pretty specific flexibility they're requesting and they're tailored to individual lots. So villas 11, 12, and 13 are getting a little pinched. And the villa 11 they're requesting a 23-foot front setback. The rear setback on that lot would still be 25 feet as what was approved. The Villa 12 is requesting a 23-foot front and rear setback, and Villa 13 is 21-foot front setback and 20.2 rear setback. And then a setback of 10.4 feet is requested. This is what's shown here on the right. The townhome building, I believe it's just building 1. There is a right of way that the city required to be dedicated to ensure that the outlots to the north had some connection in terms of being able to have either a driveway, road connection, or utility connection. It's unclear at this time if that lot will ever actually be developed, and it will remain unimproved right away for the foreseeable future. And it is possible it would never be used for a road. It is more possible it'll be used for utilities. And they're requesting that they have the ability to go as close as 10.4 feet to that property line. In addition, they would propose fence and landscaping to provide an additional buffer from the road if there is ever a road. So that is another area that they're requesting some setback flexibility. The landscape islands are a bit trickier, and that is why you have a revised resolution in front of you right now. As part of the preliminary approval, staff, it was me, really wanted to see pedestrian pathways in the landscaping islands, and really wanted to coordinate the landscaping islands so that people walking from their cars, since it was such a big lot, would have a clear pathway that kind of separates them from walking in a parking lot. So with that, the resolution that I wrote said that they needed to still meet the minimum planting requirements. And I also wanted them to have the amount of parking spaces that they're showing, that was needed. So, I take responsibility for that. So we're just running out of space to have the pedestrian pathways in addition to the landscaping sizes of these islands, for planting. And so at this point, in order to just be mindful that we're limited on space, I still feel it's important to have these pedestrian pathways. I still feel it's important to make sure that we have enough parking spaces to account for their potentially busiest time of the day, time of the year. Requesting that the pedestrian pathways count towards that planting area. And then after the staff report went out, and taking just a double check on everything, I noticed that there are some other areas besides the commercial lot, where there just seems to be some pinching. In addition to like here, I'm gonna put the pointer on, this is an example. So we have this drive-through lane, we have some parking, and then we have the dumpster. Technically, there's no end landscape island. So trying to figure out how we can come up with a way that we're still getting the intent of the landscape islands is to have trees throughout the parking lot to minimize the heat effect that's created when you just have a whole bunch of pavement. And so part of the proposed language in front of you says that areas where an end island cannot be fully accommodated, an equivalent landscaped area adjacent to the parking stalls must be provided. So basically, I'm saying this area right here, at least 320 square feet of landscaping should be provided.
I don't see your pointer.
Oh, my goodness. Right here, right here, thank you. So basically, we would want to see some shrubs right here, and then I think it's more important that we see some trees along here. A couple of trees, and have the equivalent amount of landscaping in this area to meet the intent of that goal, where it's just getting a little pinched. Yeah, basically the language now in front of you requests that the following flexibilities are granted for the landscape islands within the development. A pedestrian pathway within landscaping islands can count towards the required planting area. There's a few areas in the multifamily buildings where I noticed that would be needed as well, but that was after this was sent out. And then areas where an end island cannot be fully accommodated, an equivalent landscaped area adjacent to the parking stalls must be provided. And then each island must include at least one tree with shrubs and ground cover, and the islands, the length of 2 parking stalls must include at least 2 trees. So that should account for everything, and I don't believe we would need any more flexibility for those landscaping islands. And then the commercial landscaping formula, the preliminary approvals had said that they needed to redo their plans to have each commercial lot be treated, the perimeter of each commercial lot be used in the formula for landscaping. However, this is leading to a really high number of trees and shrubs that are there's not enough space to accommodate all of them. And so the request at this time is to treat the commercial lot and shared parking lot as one lot for the purposes of calculating the underlying landscaping requirement. This will still lead to a significant number of trees and shrubs. We're talking like in the 1,000 range of trees throughout this development. So I don't think that we're actually losing very much from the city. We're just trying to make sure there's other concerns at play here, such as public safety wanted clustering of landscaping on the county roads so that they could access buildings easier. And there's simply no way they're going to be able to cluster anything with the number of trees that we would otherwise be requiring. So just trying to have those competing interests, we can have a middle ground. So at this point, the recommendation is to approve the draft resolution that's in front of you with the revisions for the PUD amendment to the Hope Community preliminary approval. And then the applicant team is here to, I think they have some comments themselves, and then they'll be available to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Natalie. At this point in time, before we begin our discussion and recommendation, I would like to give you the opportunity to share with us anything that you might have to say regarding the PUD amendment.
Yeah, of course.
If you just want to introduce yourself, because I'm not sure who was here the last time you were before the commission. So if you want to
Sure.
let them know who you are.
Yes,
Appreciate it.
my name is Josh McKinney. I'm with Measure Group, a consultant for Hope Ministries. So I kind of had worked with Hope, as well as our civil engineer, Mark Anderson from Samatech, to develop the initial, PUD. So really appreciate, kind of the opportunity to come back and tell you kind of where we're at right now. So Natalie did a phenomenal job, as she always does, in terms of explaining what you're looking at. But certainly, I would just want to point out kind of the main differences from our perspective is we're excited that, you know, we have a home builder that is coming to us with a, you know, a larger villa product, that includes some, you know, some with 3-car garages and certainly a higher quality product than we had originally even envisioned for our site. So shame on us for not shooting high enough, I guess. And then on the townhome side, these townhomes are, you know, deeper and wider than what we had originally shown. And so same situation, we've got somebody that wants to build a higher quality product than what we had originally indicated on our PUD. And so that's some of the kind of dimensional flexibilities we're asking for really result from, you know, certainly we've lost some density on the housing product. And so we're really trying to make sure we're able to kind of keep enough where it still works, so to speak. And then also, I think the last couple of these flexibilities really were a result of trying to clean up some of the conditions of approval from the previous PUD that was established. And so when we're starting to go through things and realize, hey, you know, for example, if we can cut this commercial lot up 6 different ways and have a whole bunch of, you know, perimeter that's being calculated, or you know, we're getting a vastly different product than if we just look at this a little bit more holistically. It's just more kind of how you cut the pie, so to speak. So we're looking forward to kind of hearing feedback from you today. We have with us tonight, we have a civil engineer, Mark Anderson. We've got Brian Lother, pastor of Hope Hope Community Church, and Art Plant from JP Brooks, who's the home builder. So excited to stand for your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And then at this time, if there is a commissioner who would like to begin with questions or comments?
I need to close the, oh,
Nope, there's no public hearing for this item because we already had the public hearing for this particular.
Just one question before we dive into comments. I didn't see I'm missing where the public benefits are stated
So
from the application.
are we talking about the original public benefits? Okay, so that, I tried to include the resolution from.
Yeah, I didn't see it in there.
The original resolution 2024-16, and where it talked about,
Whatever it was that you were referencing in your recommendation of like, hey, take a look at the public benefits. This is our opportunity to look at that.
here at that, I'm trying to find the exact verbiage. There were a number of public benefits in terms of.
Yeah, we've added a few since the original resolution, so that's my understanding. If we wanted to identify a few of the additional ones that have been added as the project moves forward and the design is being finalized. We've added a public sewer extension, which will actually cross to the east side of 116 and benefit future development over there. We've added a tunnel crossing. Originally, there was just a 20-foot regional trail easement that was proposed. Now we have an easement that's about 40 feet wide for a tunnel and a pretty significant crossing for both the community and the development. Over on the east side, we got a 50-foot trunk sewer main that's going to be installed here in the coming weeks. That the whole community church property conveyed that easement to the city. We've also conveyed 50-foot of right of way over here on the north side for the neighboring property as well, so that there could be a future public roadway. So some of these certainly benefit property beyond the whole community church project, but it's just some of those pieces that need to fall into place, and it's part of the reason we need some flexibility in the dimensions once we convey these easements in right ways.
Your resolution is not as clear as I would have hoped it to be. So I would say all of that's accurate. Some other things I'd like to point out, the flexibility we granted with the landscape islands was because the intent was that we were gonna provide those pedestrian pathways. That was seen as a public benefit. It also seems a public benefit that we were proposing detached villas and row homes in this area where those products really weren't called out in the general mixed use. It was more meant for apartments. So we're actually having less density on the north side than what could have otherwise been approved by right. So that was another benefit at the time. And then I would say a benefit that wasn't exactly tied to the PUD, but I think as part of like the overall negotiations for the site is they did dedicate the water tower site to the city. That did happen before the application, but I do feel like that it is important to consider that they kind of gave that with the idea that that was seen as a public benefit to the city, and they have been an ongoing partner with our water infrastructure. So.
Yeah, I wanted to see like what was written in the application, because I wanted to see if like for example, where my head was going, like the right of way piece. Like I remember there being a public benefit stated that like, hey, we're paving the path for future development. And then, so I wanted to see, is it referring to that one? Are we referring to a different one? So I just wanted to see the language in the original application, which I thought was in here, so.
Well, if I recall, the right of way wasn't the discussion because the lot to the north of that is a private lot, and they were wondering if they would have access.
Yeah, they were very concerned about losing that access, and so that the right of way proposed. They had a driveway granted, but in order to really give that property like memorialized access, that right of way, the 50-foot right of way was identified by engineering staff.
So that lot, oh, I'm sorry.
I can just, I'm Pastor Brian Lothar from Hope Community. Thank you for allowing us to speak here tonight. I give you a little background on the property to the north. We actually owned that, and about 15 years ago, Tom Lithgow, who was the neighbor to the north at the time, wanted to acquire that 2-acre parcel. So we did that. With that, he requested us to give him a driveway easement of 20 feet wide. So we granted that 20-foot wide easement to him. To be frankly honest with you, if I'd have known that was going to become a 50-foot wide easement, then I'm not sure we would have been as amenable at the time. And we did request it to be an easement, not a right of way, but the engineers said that it needed to be a right of way. So that's why we're really requesting that point to that corner of that building to be a variance. As you look at the diagram, as you go further north, there's less encroachment into that easement as it goes north. And when you're halfway back on building it up, it does meet the setback requirements. So it's not a continual 10-foot, it's just at that one corner. So, but that's kind of the background of the history.
Could you point to that on a map? So
Yeah,
Yep. It's on the request page, the one that you have the request at the top.
Great.
Okay, that's
Or that one.
that's what I thought. I just wanted
Yeah,
to
north
make
is
sure.
this way.
I know.
So this was the benefits as summarized in the staff report, Commissioner Lind. We had an architectural transition between existing uses and the proposed development by locating taller buildings as far away from existing single-family homes as possible, lessening the impact to existing residents. Additionally, the requested flexibility for villas and townhomes in the northern portion of the site allows for a transition in density from multifamily buildings to the south. Construction of Hope Way or 100th Avenue, that is still a debate. An east-west connection to future development to the west. I think maybe that's what one of the things you're talking about. Because now that arguably provides relief from a future east-west traffic that could otherwise have been routed through the existing Hunter Ridge neighborhood to the north. And this idea was very well received at the neighborhood meeting. Coordination with the city staff consultants to shift existing right-of-way to allow for a more economical construction of water utility lines. Again, going back to the fact that they have been significant partners in finalizing our water infrastructure in this area. Coordinating with city staff consultants, oh no, that's one I just read. Improvement of existing drainage conditions for neighbors to the south of the project area through stormwater routing through their site. Establishment of a significant tax base to serve Corcoran and its residents well into the future. Providing a trail easement in excess of 20 feet, which is the city standard, to support a grade separated crossing of County Road 116 and the Three Rivers Diamond Lake Regional Trail. The applicant proposes to dedicate this easement from the outset of the project to allow for more holistic trail planning. Alternatively, Three Rivers would have needed to acquire this easement at a later point, which could have delayed the trail underpass project and lead to land conflicts in order to expand the corridor. The project serves as a vital link for future development in the city of Corcoran. The flexibility in applying the requiring landscape across the site will allow for more buffering near the edges of the site. The flexibility to bypass the parking island, parking bay requirement within the commercial parking lot will allow for more unified pedestrian walkways. Replacement of, this one ended up not making it into the final resolution though. I know, I'm sorry. I tried.
Talk to me.
I tried.
I was even actually gonna talk about something related to that tonight.
So, so I would say that, yeah, there are a number, and then, to Mark, the engineer's point, they've added a couple more since we've worked through this process. And they have further reduced that density for the buffer yards. I would say that the additional request for landscaping island flexibility, it continues to be because of those pedestrian pathways that I'm stressing. We could remove those, and that could reduce it, but I think that would be at the expense of pedestrian safety and in those parking lots. And I think it'd be better to have pathways be a part of those planting areas.
Especially if they're seniors.
Yeah, no, that's very true. So I think some flexibility there makes sense. And the overall intent is, again, to provide trees, and I think we're still meeting that intent. Is we're just having a slightly reduced vegetation area.
Thanks for walking through that. I think it was really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry that wasn't in the staff report. I'll be sure to note that for council.
Sure, Kazuki, you have some questions?
Yeah, the pedestrian pathways, so you said the landscape islands are public pathways. Are they intended to just get people safely through the parking lot? Or are they intended to be an extension of paths for people that are going on Diamond Lake Regional Trail eventually when that becomes, or
Oh, there are
sidewalk
areas.
connections and paths inside the development? I'm not really clear where all those are.
Yes, there are areas where they're extending it from the public sidewalk. Like between the islands, between the proposed retail B and proposed medical C. So that sidewalk does connect to the trail. And yeah, so there's a couple of areas where there's proposed retail E, you're seeing some. Through proposed medical D, you're seeing some sidewalk from the trail to get to those buildings as well through the landscape islands. And then it's also areas with it for people who are parking their cars and walking to those buildings as well.
Okay. I guess my other comment on it as a whole, as far as the buffer class, the lots to the north, there's like 3 2-acre lots that have a lot of cover on them already, but I know the one that's farthest to the west, it has a building almost right on the southern property line. And then the one that's farthest east, the home is pretty close to the east property line. And that town or the villa number 1 is very, very close then to that house. And I guess my question is, it looks like there's quite a bit of tree screening happening there. Where I'm not clear is the area, the west, yeah, right in there. There's grayed out trees on the one map I'm looking at, but I don't know if that's trees that are being removed that are showing on the edge of that field.
Gray ones are actually being saved and then the darker ones are.
Being added. Oh, okay, so it does look like then there is a pretty good tree cover all along that northern boundary there.
Just to clarify, the buffer yard variance, when it was created, was not intended to utilize like the landscaping. The buffer yard was supposed to be on the developed property. So not using, so just wanted to make sure that even though there is like a significant tree, the intent of it was to ensure
Yeah, and
that
I
existing
appreciate,
vegetation wasn't used, right?
I
on someone
appreciate
else's
that
property.
it looks, that it sounds like you guys have already reduced the number of villas and townhomes on the property to make more space. If we
Also
do
know
the
that they're-
buffer yard,
Proposing a fence to. the
Okay.
area too, which I think provides some screening. So they're not saying they aren't going to do the
Okay.
buffer yard, they're just asking that,
It
the,
changed the class.
I mean, if you look at it.
change the
like,
class, sure.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because they are residential,
Yeah.
I guess, so that does make sense, but. You know, right past those, you've got a 4-story building, you know, just to the south of the villas, you've got a 4-story apartment building, the active senior. And then right down that cul-de-sac road, you've got the senior housing, which again is a big 4-story building, so within sight lines of. The existing homes, you've got some pretty high density. So I guess my question is, if we go with. If you did go with the new buffer yard option, or reclassified that, could they go with maybe the minimum number of trees on the classification D, even though they're reclassifying as B and C? But I don't know if there's even space for that once you get away from the 30-foot minimum in D
If I
to
could, su-
20 or 10-foot minimum in B and C.
if I could suggest to you, with the application, the formal application with the city, there was an aerial view with the site plan overlaid in that aerial view, which shows all the trees that are on this particular diagram, and that gives you a clearer idea of where the lot lines come, what trees are going to remain on that northern edge. And that was one of the goals that we had, was to retain that 80-year-old tree line that was there.
Yeah.
Some of them obviously are probably need to be brought down just from age and lack of good health. But all in all, there's a significant screening from all the villas to the property owners to the north. And
Okay.
particularly, the property owners' homes are
Set back.
significantly set back, so that they're not even going to have a view of the water tower, never mind.
Oh,
Never
okay.
mind the four.
Water tower is quite high.
Yeah.
So there hasn't,
165 feet.
there hasn't been a lot of objections from the nearby land, the adjacent landowners?
There were a
would
number
say
of
that.
people who came out,
Definitely,
yeah, when it,
yeah.
and they had the opportunity during the public comment to share.
I'm new to the council.
Yeah,
so
no, I appreciate it.
don't
So,
have that.
so just, so when we were looking at, and having discussions with city staff through this buffer yard discussion, so we kind of are running into this, in this case, distinction with a difference of like zoning versus land use. So, you know, our alternative, the underlying zoning for this whole PUD is the GMU. You know, rather than going and saying, well, no, the villas are single family, we're gonna zone those R1. We're gonna zone the townhomes medium
R7,
density,
yeah.
we're gonna, you know, really kind of get into the weeds on each individual area from a zoning perspective. We're instead looking at the use and what we're actually trying to accomplish. We're trying to go, and that was really a goal from the outset, which is to align, you know, uses with uses. And this was just one of those things where, you know, I'm sure we all got into a spot where we're like, we need to get this into to Natalie, and we didn't ask the questions either regarding these buffer yards. Until we start digging in further, we're like, whoa, we're aligned here from a use standpoint. We should look at this a little bit closer.
I will note, the original concept I went to council did look at a scenario where if we didn't do it as a PUD, did it as like a plat by right, where we had basically this area rezoned this area rezoned this. Council even got so overwhelmed, they're like, let's just do a PUD. And that's the first time I've ever heard them say that. So, I would say that, yeah, I do think that there could have been a way for us to have rezoned these areas based on the use proposed that would have resulted in a less buffer yard requirement. But because of the PUD and treating it holistically, are we requiring a level of buffering that doesn't quite make sense, because this isn't where the commercial uses are. And there are hundreds, like most of the taller buildings are over 150 feet away from the buffer areas.
Yeah, which more than is enough for even a D classification.
Right.
Good question. Anyone else have any questions or
Yes, I
comments?
do. The senior housing, has that been designed? Or is it just the placeholder?
Right now we have it just as a placeholder. We're actively marketing that site to senior developers. I would say the state of the market's probably impacting interest in terms of interest rates, as well as just seniors, a very difficult product at the moment with some regulations the state has put on. So we're working on it. Would love to have something start, in 2025, on one of these, multifamily, whether it be the senior or the market rate, so.
The reason I ask is you, to ameliorate the issue with buffer yards, could the Hope Way shift to the south?
Yeah, so these dimensions in terms of the building itself, that's a pretty standard dimension. And so we're basically, up against a wetland buffer on the one side, so we're really pinched in that area with parking and building dimension. So that almost really set the Hope Way alignment off to the west. At one point in time, I actually think we had swung that road further south and we just couldn't make it work.
Okay.
So that's how we landed at where we're at today.
I had to ask the question.
Oh, I appreciate it, absolutely.
Also, I noticed that in the report that mentions townhouses, and on the engineering drawings, it says row houses. So,
There, I can explain. There was a distinction with a difference within the zoning code of what could happen within GNU at one point in time. So we were calling them whatever the zoning code said until we got to the point of the PUD, and now we can use them pretty much interchangeably.
I'm using them interchangeably too, so that might even be something that I put at one point. I said row homes, because I think it said row homes on the plan. But they're townhomes in terms of the definition in our zoning code. We don't really define row homes, we define townhomes, and they've qualified as townhomes.
they should reflect that on their drawings. So,
We can take care of that.
yeah. The other question I have is with respect to the buildings on the far north, south. Again, going back to placement, could those shift to?
This line right here?
Yeah, that goes right there. Could
Yeah,
those
so-
shift to the east?
Good catch.
Mark, I think we actually looked at that one time, we get pinched with the driveway in that corner.
Okay.
And that's kind of the dimensional constraint for us. What's that?
The utility.
Yes, that's another good point. If we shove this building south, we're just gonna end up being in a spot where we have two driveways that are kind of connecting there, colliding there, so. I wish we weren't in a position where we needed to ask for the setback. We're just kind of pinched on all sides with the 50-foot easement along Highway 116 for sewer, and then we've got another 50 feet that's taken out of that piece of land for that right away in that particular location.
Also a question regarding the walkway that we were talking, we want to go to 5 feet. What about reducing the parking spaces?
I would highly recommend we do not reduce the parking space. We've already provided, that was again a fight that I fought. They provided a traffic study, the parking study, I'm sorry, and the amount of parking stalls that they have will meet their highest demand. So if we reduce the parking spaces, we're saying some people are gonna have to park somewhere else, and we don't allow street parking in this area. So I don't think at this point, I strongly believe the amount of parking that's shown, it should be there. If we really don't want to provide any flexibility on the landscaping islands, then I think we need to say goodbye to the pedestrian pathways, because that would be the alternative.
Is it all surface parking for the apartment buildings?
No, the apartment buildings have some underground parking. The commercial area does not have underground parking.
Well, obviously the medical and retail spots are where the issue is. I mean, don't want to probably do this, but one less building reduce our problem as well. Right?
They do have preliminary entitlement to the building items that they're showing.
Okay.
Five parking stalls doesn't seem like a lot to me, but I'm relatively new. I know that discussions have happened.
There are discussions at the state as well regarding parking, get quite interesting. So I would say if that is a topic of interest to you, I would encourage you to investigate. I think it's hard to solve. But I do hear in my head the song, we paved paradise and we put up a parking lot. So like, I get it, but at the same time, it's a scenario where you would hate to not have enough for the buildings and then run into
If
that
there was
problem.
if there was an area for proof of parking, I think I'd be less concerned, but there isn't. So I want to make sure that we're setting this area up for success. Again, that's been in conversations that me and Josh had.
So, we've had a lively discussion over this before. We paid for a parking study, it is what it is. So here's what I'd say is we're preliminary entitled to that amount of square footage on the commercial space, and we're gonna do everything we can for it to fit that way. The likelihood that this develops in exactly the form and fashion that you're looking at today is extremely low,
Yeah.
despite my best efforts.
Right, because
So
that's
my-
also phase 4. And that's what I wanted to point out is that the phase 1 and 2 are really the villas and the townhomes. But everything else, until you have someone who's providing you a product, like this scenario here, he now has a builder. And so now they can say, okay, what really will work and what won't.
And to that point, this is our maximum square footage per the PUD. Theoretically, we have less square footage, we have less parking generated, so it's possible, we don't want to pave anything we don't have to. You'd end up with a larger landscape situation there anyway, given the total area. We're not changing our 15 acres of, commercial, and this is 15 acres here, that's a finite amount. So then, if it's not paving, it's green,
Yeah. Okay.
One thing you see also in areas that have overdone it on the parking, Ridgedale's a good example.
Yeah.
I mean, they're starting to utilize that space for other things, over on the side with the library, and there's apartments over there. They've
Put up a
literally
building.
carved out a nice little landscape. I'm not sure what it is. Is it a transit center or a little park?
The park.
Oh, yeah,
It's very, very nice
If I
looking.
turn out to be wrong, I think we can all be happy. Like, I would rather be wrong in this scenario because there's less
can
less
convert
parking
it
demand,
to
and we can
something
deal
else.
with that later and into the other opportunities. Than to prove that, I was right and we have less parking than what we.
Frankly, we'd all like less car-centric development,
Yeah.
but we all drive, we all have to drive. We don't have viable transit in this area yet. When it comes and we don't need that parking, it'll be converted into something else
Yeah, we're
fairly
gonna have a
easily.
commercial
So,
outlot. That's just, to your point,
Yeah.
Ridgedale's a great example. We've got these carve outs for things like a park, but also 5 years ago, there wasn't any apartments around, or senior apartments around Ridgedale. You had a Sears that was failing, now it's gonna be Kowalski's. Like, it's just, those
Yeah,
commercial
it morphs.
spaces kind of take on, a little bit of an ecosystem. And Natalie and I are both young enough where I can't wait for her. I'll be there.
It'll be a few years.
What are you saying about us?
No, I'm just saying.
Okay. Well, did you have any comments or questions you wanted to ask Commissioner Yang? Otherwise. No, yes, okay. The one that I just wanted to touch on, and it isn't because I am trying to push back on the request for the setback variance, but is there any way to ensure that right of way would only be used for utilities and not become a road? And I guess I'm thinking of a future resident of that property, not so much because I don't want to grant a flexibility,
Sure.
but I would hate to be the person who says, oh, sure, go ahead, put 10.5 feet there, and it ends up being a road.
So to keep in mind, the road would only be about 28 foot wide.
Okay.
So there would still be some green space between the setback of the
Sure.
building and the actual pavement of the road. And then that's why I think some landscaping and a fence or something there would also be helpful to provide a buffer so that it is a little bit more like a little bit off of or provides a little bit more separation from a future road, but it wouldn't be 50 feet of road that goes there, if that helps at all with the visual.
Yeah, no, it does. It's just, it's like, we can't guarantee that those properties aren't going to develop and at what density they will develop when they develop. And so it's more just because we can't ensure that, which was a lot of the selling point, right? I just wanted to say, well, also the same potential for all of those selling points also exist on the opposite. And so I was just trying to think about who is going to live there in the future and how can we protect their best interests as well, without, without putting them in a spot where it's really not only like undesirable, but maybe who purchases it or what have you, then loses value in selling, because when they purchase it to when they sell, there's been a change and now they're an end, but not only are they an end, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like all of those rabbit holes that you could go down. So that I just wanted to see if there was a way to be like, hey, it's going to just remain. But there
Yeah,
isn't.
I
We
don't
would just
think
have
I
to
could
grant
get
the flexibility.
engineering on board with that.
Okay.
But I, from the conversations, I think what it's most likely to be used for would be utilities. But that outlot that it's leading to right now does not have any road frontage. So it is possible it could be a road. What I can guarantee is it's gonna be a 28-foot road. We could probably memorialize that even if our right-of-way standards change. So we would not want to see the road pavement exceed 28 feet, so that there is some more separation as well.
I would think the only way it's an issue is if they tried to develop that 2 acres into really high density that they would need.
Well, I just want to point out that sometimes in neighborhoods, when development is on the cusp, neighbors will cooperate together to sell to one landowner. So it is possible that just not that 2 acres gets sold. Do you know what I mean? And so,
Yeah,
anyway.
and if that's true too, there might be other road opportunities. We don't need to use this one. But
Maybe
again,
this-
we'd rather be proven wrong later.
Maybe the city should purchase it and put a little park in there.
I don't think that property owner wants us to purchase it though, as
No.
of right now, yeah.
I mean, it's a nice wooded 2 acres.
Okay, that was my question. Just, again, wanted to do what I could to look out for that potential or future resident. But all that being said, if there isn't, which it sounds like there isn't, then I didn't have any questions or concerns regarding any of the other requests for the PUD amendment. So,
I wanted to make another comment on behalf of like my fellow community members, you know, you heard it. The concern of traffic. Almost every single person that came up here that lives in that area talked about traffic. I don't see, it's also one of the most dangerous intersections that we have in our city. It was we just honored some citizens that helped with an accident and helped. I don't see a public benefit listed of any way that you're enhancing the security or safety of these roads. And in fact, I didn't see it listed, but maybe it is implied somewhere that I wasn't seeing. So, cause I just saw it quickly, but I felt like we heard that from the community and it was like, well, we did a traffic study, it's gonna be fine. And I felt like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that even after that meeting, people, at least I live in this community, so I talk to my neighbors, they're very, very, very unsettled about it. So if we, council, can negotiate any public benefits and this flexibility, I would say if it could be considered to be in that arena, I don't know the solution, but that would be my comment.
Yeah, I think, so a comment noted, I understand completely what you're saying, in this case, I think contributing towards that end in terms of reduction in traffic is we do have, you know, reduction in the amount of units. It doesn't seem significant for this, in the aggregate, however, for what we're discussing in terms of this particular home builder, it is a significant reduction in
Yep.
going from, you know, what we're showing right now to, or what we did show or what we're showing now.
And I was just gonna add to Josh, there are going to be improvements. So you can see the turn lanes down here on 116. That is a city project. I'm not sure if I know the timeline of it offhand, if that's still gonna get underway this year, or if that's next year's project. But
Is the city paying for that?
So the developer will be paying for it. So we haven't even started the design, I don't think, on the turn lanes for it. But yeah, so that's part of the project. There were some offsite road improvements that were required both on County Road 30 and 116.
yeah, so this intersection will get rebuilt with turn lanes, and then there's additional turn lanes approaching 30. And in the future, there's gonna be a full intersection out here, so not all the traffic has to go to 116, then we'll be able to go 2 different directions, so. Those are part of the traffic study and our commitments that will happen as development occurs, so.
And I will say we're limited on like, in terms of like a signal or something, we are limited by the county too. It has to meet warrants, and I don't believe that they have said that this is by itself have met warrants for a signal at 116 in Hunters or Hopeway, whatever that ends up being right there, right here. Oh, no, I don't have the laser pointer.
Madam Chair,
the east-west road, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Councilman.
The things that we did to thank our citizens that helped in those things. All of our roads need review, but the council and the mayor have been extremely hard on our county commissioner. He has sat in front of us. We've literally had many the one conversation we had, we just had the large accident at County Road 19 and
County Road
30. And then the intersection of 117 and 19 is another one of our concerns. This one has lights, all of these improvements. It's not something we as a city can do. We are at the mercy of the county owning both those two roads. And we are doing everything we can from the county or from the council and the mayor to, we need traffic control. We need something. What is the plan? There's another thing that's introduced into this whole thing for all of us that we are all very concerned about, and that is that 610 extension when it ends up just east of 101. While this delivers and ends up putting in a number of things, it's going to be over a certain amount of time. It's not going to be built like this overnight. It's going to take some time. So as things get added, that might trigger a few of these, pull some of these levers or flip some of these switches that says, okay, the county's got to make these improvements and do these changes. Believe me, I've been out here just as long as most of you guys do, and our drive-through traffic is just that. It's drive-through traffic. They're public roads. We're at the mercy of the county, but we are all advocates to try and make these things safer and better. So, very, very heard very loud and clear, Lindsay, and thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me say something too. It's all very much in the forefront of everybody here. Natalie thinks about it. Dwight, you guys are all over it, but we are constrained. We can't tell the county what to do. We're at their mercy. So.
But I do think that the way that the approach that we're gonna wait until the traffic is there and then we're gonna disrupt the traffic by creating construction is a backwards approach to
Very.
good planning. And I do think that we can do better, right? Unfortunately, that's usually what just shakes the dollars loose is the demand for the severity of incidents before it happens. So with that being said, does anybody else have anything they want to make note of? And if not, I will make the motion to recommend the approval of the Hope Meadows PUD amendment, city file 24-019. And just to recap, I did make that motion for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, and all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Say nay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm really sorry about those basswood trees. But thank you. I know.
He was on board.
I know. Okay, and then moving on, we just have any other business? So Natalie, I'll let you take 7A and B if there is other business or a planning project update. She does hand out the information, so if there's any questions from us, feel free to ask us now or.
I will say, we don't technically have any other business scheduled tonight. However, before we get to item 8, I will add that the liaison program has changed.
Yes.
So planning commissioners are not expected to attend meetings on a scheduled basis. There may be some updates that we'll ask the chair to provide on a quarterly basis. That part has to get fleshed out, and you're welcomed to attend anything that you want to. And then if we have a really big item such as another Hope, which hopefully we won't have, but if we were to have another large development.
The Oswald Farm.
Well, yeah, but that one, we'll put a pin in that one.
All right.
But there's a large development that we are processing. We might ask the see if anyone is available to attend the council meeting where it will be reviewed at. So it's gonna be more of an as-needed basis, and then as you would like to attend, so
So this liaison calendar,
we can
can
strike it.
Okay.
That is one significant change that hopefully frees up some time.
May I ask a question? What is the general like status quo of speaking as a commissioner at a council meeting? I ask this because I found myself being vocal and I'm not sure if it's appropriate. Cause I'm not on council, like I'm, you know, and we've already given my opinion on these things before at our meeting, so I'm like,
We're fairly flexible as a city. I would say generally you'll want to approach the podium if you know you have something to say, and you can raise your hand and they can choose to recognize you. And I think with our current council, they will recognize you. And so if you go to the reason why we ask you to the podium is because when you're speaking from the chairs, it's hard to catch for the minutes. So that's really the only thing I would add is like, if you were to do that, the decorum would be to go to the podium and be like asked to speak to something, and I'm sure that they would take the opportunity to hear from you, so.
would you do that during the public comment?
So public comment is more for you want to raise
Speak on
attention
issue.
to something. Open forum, I'm sorry, open forum is more for you want to raise attention to something that's not on the agenda. And you can certainly speak to that. And then the public comment, if you do have something that you want to say about a specific application, just be careful, like you might have individual views that aren't necessarily the commission views. So it's important to say like whether you're speaking on behalf of the commission versus and whether you're speaking as a resident. There's two different hats that you're wearing, and be very careful about what you're saying that when you're representing the commission. But you can certainly always speak on a development application as a resident. You just want to just clarify that that's what you're speaking from your perspective. And then, yeah, and then during the council deliberation, then that's when if you want to kind of interject or provide some context that they might have not been really speaking to quite yet, you could approach the podium and just kind of wait for a break, and the mayor will usually indicate that he'd like to hear from you, so.
Does this also mean then that the reciprocity of liaisons at commission meetings is reneged?
Not at this time. We will still have a council liaison for at this time. That could change in the future.
And then, is this something that we are granted permission to provide feedback on if in, 6 months to a year's time, we feel like it's really created a lack of cohesion? So it's not something that, because we were requested to take a survey. Did you all get the email and were able to answer the survey regarding this issue?
I believe the way we left things is we were going to continue to evaluate
Okay.
how it's working and what changes can be continue to be made. At this time, there's nothing that needs to be changed in code for the changes that we are making.
Right, it's
So
just a change of
if
practice.
if there was a change in code, which would be removing the council liaison, that there would definitely be a public comment opportunity for that, yes. And, or we'd probably ask for feedback from the commissions again. So I think it'll be a fluid decision, so.
What was my question? I'll ask it later. Regarding that, okay. And, so does that wrap up? I know that strikes 8 as our agenda item. Do you have anything else for A or B? No.
I don't have anything
Okay.
unless you want to have questions.
So unless anybody has questions regarding the planning project update that Dwight puts together, we will move on to city council report from Councilor Merrick.
Thanks again, great discussion. I wanted to just talk about the survey and such too. A number of the folks, the way I understood, the liaison was trying on their volunteers and such, so that's kind of the way that was delivered to us. I took one thing out of it. I don't get hurt, I don't anything, but if y'all want a different council member to come here, let me know. Okay, I love coming here, I love listening to you guys. This is your meeting. I hope I have never guided or misguided you on the way you're running or doing. I'm here, a lot of you guys are new. You're doing fantastic, but if there's something I can help with, let me know. If there's a question, tell me. I'll do my best to give the council's feedback. If you want my feedback, I'll give that to you too. But again, there was comments that there was, Natalie, I don't know if you heard it. I heard that there's guiding and those kind of things, and I hope I don't do that to you guys, okay? If I do, tell me to stop. Just tell me to be quiet. So that's number one. As far as any updates, I want to listen to what you guys, if you guys have questions and stuff. Lindsay, great comments about the traffic and stuff. The two major incidents that happened, we are so lucky to have people like you and our residents that stopped and such, that did what they did and probably changed the outcome of both those situations. I mean, made them for the better. So it is unbelievable. It was neat to do those presentations and stuff. Very, very cool people, just as our volunteers are. I can't say that enough, but if you guys have questions, please don't be shy.
All right,
I would recommend, I know last council meeting, there was the discussion on, like, meeting with developers, and I think it was kind of left with like a general best practice. But I think maybe it could be worth, we're going into a new election cycle of the council members, quite a few. And so I'm just wondering if like we want to put a policy in place, or if that would be something that council wanted to adopt as a policy, as far as when they get a request to meet with a developer, how do they handle that? And who should be in it, or should it not happen, or what? I just am thinking about the future and, you know, the tribal knowledge and context of like that conversation last month. In 6 months from now, somebody might not have it, you know, if it's not a policy.
My input on that, and this is me, I do not want landowners, citizens not having full access to us as council members. That's our job, the mayors too. Developers, I've had conversations, but when it gets to a point of this is what we want, what do you think? I'd rather you meet with the council. I'd rather you meet with the mayor, the city administrator, and the planning group than to take my input on one of five. Okay. The thing that I'm afraid of, if we put a policy in place that we cannot talk to them, the council meetings are going to get very long. Okay. There are two of us, maybe three of us that are open to give them our thoughts, personal thoughts and stuff on it and such. And then there's two that don't want to at all. I just don't want the council meetings getting so long and they're guessing. And Natalie, Dwight being newer and stuff, I think they might start getting us figured out. Maybe we throw them for a loop sometimes. But I don't want to just all of a sudden say, I'm not talking to you, you got to come to the council, because those meetings, there's some of the meetings have been 5-6 hours. And we start getting really goofy towards the end of 4 hours. So that's my opinion on it. And that's what I was going to talk about the next council meeting was those things. And on the other hand, I'd rather not meet at all other than a 2-hour council meeting 2 times a month and everything is done in that time. That's what I'd rather have, but I don't think I'm serving our community. You guys, landowners are the number ones, folks. Serving the developers and stuff. We could do something as simple as we don't do PUDs anymore. We have ordinances. You have to follow those ordinances. You have to follow the zoning, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's going to build a good community. I want all your guys' input. I'd love to hear the council's input and stuff. That's me, but just letting you know.
the flip side of that I could see is that if certain people are continually approached for an opinion earlier on, does that arguably give them more input or discretion over what eventually is brought before someone as a concept plan. And I only ask that because there has been an opportunity even once, to be preliminarily a part of something. And I would feel like, I don't know, I do feel a little bit of a tension around someone else having earlier access to information.
The other thing I'll just add too, that makes it tricky, or I think a policy can certainly clarify things. I don't know that necessarily be a danger in just having a clear policy to refer to.
Yeah.
But one thing that can be really tricky is developers are landowners. And so if we're gonna say, well, we'll meet with landowners, but not developers.
Yeah.
How do you define that?
And you have to treat landowners within the same district similarly, like that's the whole point of some of our codes. So you just wanna make sure they have something that can be consistently applied. And a lot of times too, like with Hope Community Church, the landowner is the developer. And he's been a significant part of helping with water infrastructure and stuff. So if the city had just kind of like, we don't wanna talk to you because you're a developer too, that could have really led to some unintended consequences as well, but by not having conversations that allow for collaboration. So it's just a really tricky line.
Yeah.
And so, but I do think a policy could help just be like, at least, I think it does make sense that if there is gonna be a meeting, that staff is present, so.
I agree. I think somebody could drive that forward at council, and I don't mean to oversimplify it, but the policy could be, you know, a member of staff has to be there and a recap is sent to the rest of council, recapping what was discussed. And that's it.
Yeah,
But
I
like,
think
it
that
is
can
Wild
make
West and the risk is way too big without any sort of policy, and we might have two different members of council. I don't know, and I feel anxious about there being no policy and it being just like no rules. Just like,
Yeah, and I will, and then that's fair, and I'm not opposed to a policy, so I think that's great feedback. And I think, just so that you, can be rest assured, at this point, the meetings are happening typically with Jay, if not myself, in the room.
cool.
So,
And again, this is an aside.
Yeah.
The reason I listened to the discussion and I was like, wow, no, this is a really good, important discussion. And then I felt like some people might have been pro some sort of policy, but then nothing happened. I was like, well, it might be good to double click on that at some point.
yeah, I think the intention was to resume the conversation, it was just.
Yep.
Yeah, and I know it got long.
We're sure what the solution was that night and wanted some time to think on it, so.
Yep, cool.
I mean, I would also say, I know that, so I'm a little bit, I'm gonna chew on the liaison role being removed. And I know that it frees up our time, but I feel like it's a checks and balance as well. And it sort of keeps us, like, there have been so many times when I was able to be like, oh, hey, this topic is on the meeting because I was there. And I know that we still all personally have the choice to be there. The reason I'm talking about it at this point is that, by the time planning items get to us, a lot of times they seem like they've already been chewed over by so many people in that concept plan phase. And so it is a volunteer role and you don't want to ask too much of your volunteers. But if ever there was a value and a benefit to having someone from the planning commission, which I know, whatever, but some of us can't.
No, we could send an email letting you know when a concept plan is going. Yeah, we could send an email to the group and, you know.
Well,
just,
I am not trying to create more work for you and I will look, but I have appreciated the fact that it has kept me engaged in, because those things don't come before the planning commission. And so to be able to hear and then sometimes to offer valuable, feedback at that juncture rather than waiting until it gets here. So anyway.
Yeah,
That's a really good point.
Yeah, we can certainly add that to our process for concept plans, that we send an email to the commission when we anticipate a concept plan to be discussed and.
Because that's not available anywhere else, like a concept plan,
Yeah,
it just comes before the council.
Yeah, it
That's
just goes, it's
that's
just
what I
a
would call it.
staff report so I can totally see how that would get lost, so we can
Natalie,
certainly add that.
Did we have? Because the way it was delivered to us as a council is most the planning commission, the parks, and whatever else would be out there.
Yeah.
The survey stated that a majority of the people did not want to continue that. Do we have information broke out? Does the planning commission want to keep doing it as a whole? Does the parks want to keep doing it as a whole? You know what I mean?
I'd have to. I
Just
don't
asking
know
that
off the top of
question.
my
It sounds like
head.
you all want to just keep coming.
I mean, I guess the question too is like, if it's valuable, it's probably it's valuable for our learning and being engaged, but if there's a way for it to be valuable to council as well, right?
We didn't have liaisons when I was on the planning commission. So I wanted something and it developed into a liaison type deal and somebody came. But there was changes, there was a lot of things going on. It was extremely helpful for me. It's great to hear it's extremely helpful for you guys. So maybe it's one of those things if it's something you're interested to continue, maybe we continue with the planning commission and Parks is the one that said no. You know what I mean? Could you all do this
I
survey?
find it valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can maybe take that back to us, Natalie, too.
Yeah, well, so we can certainly, I mean, I wasn't trying to take anything away
No,
from you
we
guys.
don't
We were
take
trying to
anything
give you hours back. So if you would like to continue, then we can certainly keep the schedule in place. I don't see why council would be opposed to that.
I wouldn't.
And then
I
we
don't
can
think
certainly bring
anybody
that
else
feedback to council, just let them know that's what we decided as a group, that we're gonna continue.
Regardless of what you say. So I guess the only,
I love it.
the only other thing is that it had been mentioned that there would be an increase potentially in work sessions, in joint work sessions. And so I guess for me, if there was like an exchange of something, maybe I don't know, that I appreciate the FaceTime because you get to know, the council. And then again, just the checks and balances of maintaining a lot of, attention and focus on what's coming before that council for things that wouldn't come before here. But I am happy to just, I don't want to make that a thing for folks if they're not, if that's not what they want.
Is it
So.
something you'd rather have the council members rotate in this instead of just one Yahoo showing up?
I mean, I'm not not necessarily, especially
Oh,
like,
come on, geez.
no, I mean, I do miss being Lanterman. I miss Lanterman, but no,
He told me he was gonna come every time, and if he's listening, he's like,
He listens. to the
No.
Meetings later.
Yeah, I think you watched
It's
them
okay.
later, yeah.
but
It's
I'm
okay.
just saying,
You're
those
welcome.
options, please ask. I'd love a break from, not you guys, just.
Yeah, it's schedule, it's hard. I mean, that's a lot of.
This is
3
tough
days.
with full-time jobs and everything, you guys all know and have been there, so.
Can
what
work,
we got going on.
should work sessions, okay, so you can just be like, no. Okay, but should work sessions be like on a quarterly basis or like scheduled so we can plan for them with work travel and also build up agenda of things to talk about to align?
So
Or-
council has also requested that there really be no work session.
Yeah, I was about to say,
So-
yeah.
Oh, dang,
So,
okay. Never mind.
Unless it's a development that we would love to hear input prior. I think that's what we said. And I think Natalie's kind of said that too. If there's something big coming, we should do a work session and talk and get the thoughts of everybody before we
That would be
send it
nice.
down the pipe.
Yes, I think there's some discussion still on what our work sessions look like, but yeah, there has been some desire expressed that we not, to your point, that we not have work sessions because the meetings are already so long, and then to add 2 hours on the front end, or an hour and a half on the front end. No, I think it ends up being about 2 hours by the end of it.
Yeah.
That just makes the night even longer, and then there's other things that we absolutely need to have work sessions on throughout the year that can be hard to kind of have like when we have a quarterly joint work session, it just limits the ability to be, okay, we need to do a work session on the budget, because we're typically scheduling work sessions out like by a couple of weeks, not necessarily on a quarterly basis, and things come up where we really need to have a discussion versus a formal business meeting. So I think that we can certainly continue figuring out what this looks like. But I don't know if a quarterly, typically we've done an annually work session, and that's sometimes been difficult to get scheduled as it is. So I don't know if quarterly
yeah.
would be really feasible,
cool.
but
I
maybe
can take note.
semi-annually.
That's fine.
But
Yeah, no, it's
I
good.
think it's still all up in the air and being discussed about exactly what we want that to look
Yeah.
like. So I think it's good feedback to bring.
I
back.
remember now the council, the work session thing. Yep, so, yeah, it's cool.
Okay, With that being said, it is not a requirement, but if you would like to follow the commission liaison calendar listed, at least as of now, until we revisit, that's our approach. So with that being said, I will adjourn tonight's meeting, and I don't need a motion for that, so I'm just gonna get and we're adjourning.
Did we change that? Was that in the script?
Or do I need? Oh, I do need a motion. I'm sorry, you guys, it's been a really long day.
She's
But
bossy.
no, okay, I will save that for afterwards, but I drove 5.5 hours to get here.
Thank you for your commitment.
I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye. Okay, anyone opposed? No.